What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're working on this 2009 Honda Civic. Me and a friend picked this car up for 600 bucks in hopes to flip it and make some money. This car definitely needs some work. The interior is filthy, the body's dirty and rusty, and the engine has a bad head gasket. So before we get to all that, we'll just show you some clips of the body here and all the body work it needs, the detailing inside with how dirty it is, and a little bit on the engine. So this car here, with that blown head gasket, we got a used engine for it for 350 bucks. Came with a really good set of tires, and the car overall was pretty solid besides one hole in the floor. We ended up patching that no problem, so it wasn't really an issue. Our goal with this car is basically to fix it up as best we can, get a Nova Scotia motor vehicle inspection done on it, and sell it for as much money as we can without putting much into it. So we started out at $600, and our budget is around $1,500, and we're hoping to sell it for more than $4,000. So what we'll be doing in this video is just a little quick time lapse and some shots of us fixing this car and the before and after with this car, just showing you what we did and how much it cost and how you can do it yourself if you want to make some money by buying a cheap car, if you're a handy mechanic and you can do that kind of thing, especially if it's a side job. It's pretty easy to do. So our first step with this car was basically bring it in and assess it. We wanted to really check it over, make sure there wasn't any major problems that we didn't see when we first purchased the car. Since we got it for 600 bucks, we could probably make our money back if we had to part it out or sell it for scrap. So we weren't too concerned in that way. So what I'm doing here is I'm taking apart the brakes, I'm lubing up the sliders, checking on the pads, making sure everything's good to go. The next thing we're doing here is, once we figured out there's nothing else that the car needed, we're diving into the engine. We're just going to go right ahead and pull this engine out and drop a new engine in. Doing a head gasket is possible, but for the price and the time it takes to do it, and then if you run into some issues while you're doing it, it's just as easy to get a used engine from your local salvage yard like we did and swap it out with the one that's in it. I didn't get a whole lot of video of doing this, unfortunately. I got mostly just a time lapse of us putting it back together and a few quick shots of it on the floor and that kind of stuff. Once we had the engine out, we had to separate the engine and transmission, put the transmission onto the new engine, and swap over the whole wiring harness. As far as gasket material goes, we just used silicone gasket maker for the exhaust and any other components that had to be resealed back onto the new engine. Got some fresh oil in the car here, and this is our first time starting it. It actually ran really good and we were both impressed. The only thing it ended up needing was an O2 sensor, but we got another one pretty cheap that was used, and I didn't have any troubles after that. After that, we moved on to patching the hole in the floor and doing the rest of the body work. Patching the hole, we just cut out a piece of metal, fiberglassed it in place, and covered it over with some rocker guard. Now, as far as the dog legs and rocker panels go, I basically ground off all the rust and then replaced any of the metal that was missing with some sheet metal I had laying around. I just cut it to fit, tacked it in place, and fiberglassed over it. After that, we were able to sand down the rockers, prime them, and paint them, and it went actually really well. It turned out pretty decent. We got some color match paint from our local body shop, or auto shop I should say. They matched right to the paint color, the paint code of the car, and it turned out pretty good. One thing to keep in mind if you're buying a car with some rust on it and you want to fix it yourself, always expect the worst. The car's always got more rust than you expect, and the metal always disintegrates more than you ever expect. So just prepare yourself for that. But really, there's nothing a little bit of time and effort, fiberglass and sheet metal can't fix. So for the dog legs, I basically fiberglassed over the metal I welded in. Then I body filled a couple layers over that, sanding between each layer. The rocker panels were pretty easy. I used a little bit of fiberglass on the bottom, but overall it was mostly sand down, a little bit of body fill, then sand the body fill, prime and paint. And the paint actually matched really good. I was quite impressed. When I finished my last layer of clear coat there, I just peeled the tape back and used a little bit of clear coat blending solvent. It actually helps blend that clear coat right in with the paint, the existing clear coat, and it tends to work pretty good. You can always wet sand and buff it later. Once I was done all the color paint on the bodywork, I basically went over, sanded the brake calipers, painted them. We went into the trunk here, we sanded it all out, primed and painted it, and we ended up getting a new spare tire for it and a new trunk liner to go on top. The car was actually missing all of that when we bought it, so that made a nice finish in the trunk. After that, we moved on to the interior. We removed the seats so we could get a good look at that carpet and get a good deep clean on it. It was pretty gross and needed a lot of cleaning. It also gave us a chance to really get a good clean on those seats. We ended up cleaning every nook and cranny of this car, getting it all cleaned out and buffed and polished to a good shine. So we'll show you how we did that and the before and after and how it turned out. I just used Meguiar's polishing compound, or rubbing compound I guess, with a basic buffer as well as a little bit of hand buffing. And then I finished it off with a nice spray wax on top. Just for an added touch of aesthetics, the wheels were quite rusty, so I just sanded them down with my wire wheel, cleaned them off with some degreaser, and gave them a quick coat of black paint, and they actually turned out really nice. It went along good with those good looking tires that were pretty much brand new, so it set the car off really well. Once the car was all cleaned up and ready to go, we took it for our first drive, and it actually drove really well. The steering wheel was a little crooked, so we ended up straightening that out, and we ended up finding a coolant leak that probably originally caused the car to overheat. Turned out to be a radiator. Luckily, my buddy knows a lot of people with used Hondas and scrap Hondas, and we were able to get a radiator for free. So I took the next day and swapped out the rad, and no more coolant leaks. We found the key fob didn't work, and we took a risk and bought a battery to see if it would work, and turns out it did. All it needed was a battery. So that's another selling feature, to have a working key fob. The last thing to do was to sand and paint this bumper. This bumper definitely had a few coats of paint on it before, so I didn't want to do too much work into it, and we couldn't find another good used one with the matching color. So I basically just did a quick sand down, get it as smooth as I could, taped it off, and painted it to match the car. I definitely could have done a better job, but it turned out pretty good considering the amount of time I put into it. So now we're just going to show you the finished product, the before and after pictures, and tell you the total cost of this car and how much we were able to sell it for. So between buying the car itself for $600, all the parts we put in it, including the engine, and then getting the car registered in my name, paying the taxes on it, we were only into it for $1,500. At the end of the day, we posted it for $4,200. We got a new inspection on the car the same day we posted it, and we had somebody come look at it that night. We were firm on the price because of the new inspection on it and all the work we put into it, and we ended up getting the full $4,200 out of this car. So we basically made a profit of $1,350 each, which is pretty good for 2 quick weekends of work. So that concludes our car flip video. This is the first one I've done. I'm hoping to do a few more, make some extra money on the side, and show you guys how you can do this yourself and how easy it is. This one was a bit of a challenge because of having to do a whole engine. My next car, I'm hoping I won't have to put an engine in it, but maybe just clean it up, detail it, and a few minor things. But this car turned out really good. I was really impressed, and the buyer was really impressed with the car as well. It ran great. So anyway, thanks for watching. Subscribe for more.